Cardassians and Bajorans are the same species. Now that sounds like a radical claim. I mean, Bajorans and Cardassians look nothing alike. Well, aside from the usual humanoid features. Now, of course, we have the ancient humanoid claims that all humanoids in the galaxy share similar DNA, but no assertion is ever made that they're all the same species, just that they're related at some level. But species isn't a word that describes cosmetic differences between populations. It's a word that describes whether or not populations can naturally interbreed. That's of course an oversimplification, but in most cases it's an adequate definition and the one you'd find in most dictionaries. But Vulcans and humans can produce offspring, and Klingons and humans too, and Klingons and Romulans. So does that mean that Vulcans, Klingons, humans, and Romulans are all the same species? Well, no, not at all, because in the Enterprise episode E², we know canonically that Vulcans and humans can only produce offspring through medically mediated means.
Humans and Vulcans have never been able to reproduce.
According to Lorian, I discovered a method of successfully combining human and Vulcan genomes.
The same is true for humans and Klingons, as revealed in the TNG episode Emissary.
I didn't know it was possible for a human and a Klingon to produce a child.
Actually, the DNA is compatible, with a fair amount of help.
So they can't naturally produce offspring and are therefore not the same species. Hybrids in Star Trek essentially fit into two categories: individuals who need medical intervention, and ones we don't have enough information to form a judgment for. We see a Klingon-Romulan hybrid, Deanna Troi is a human Betazoid hybrid, but in these cases we just don't know the conditions necessary for these species to produce offspring. Betazoids and humans might be able to naturally reproduce, and they might not, we just don't know. But there is one hybrid combination that we can say with a high degree of certainty can naturally reproduce: Cardassians and Bajorans. And this seems like one of the weirder ones because they're so different visually. But take a look at the conditions under which both known Cardassian-Bajoran hybrids were born. Let's take a look at Tora Ziyal, the daughter that Gul Dukat had with a Bajoran woman named Tora Neprem. At the time of the Cardassian occupation, these relationships were seen in a particularly negative light, and the offspring of such relationships were shunned by both Cardassians and Bajorans.
Your people have never exactly welcomed half Cardassian children into your society. There'd be no place for them on Bajor or Cardassia.
If Cardassians and Bajorans required special medical intervention to produce offspring, where would they find doctors willing to facilitate Ziyal's birth? So it's already looking highly likely that Cardassians and Bajorans can interbreed naturally, but there's another case to consider, also involving Gul Dukat. Dukat became the master of the cult of the Pod Wraiths, and he led a Bajoran colony on the old Cardassian station of Empok Nor. He had a secret relationship with a Bajoran woman named Mika on the station, and when she gave birth to a baby, nobody, Dukat included, was expecting a half Cardassian baby. It stands to reason that if literally any medical procedure was necessary for Mika to give birth, the identity of the baby would have been found out and have been common knowledge almost instantly in such a small group. So we can assume with a high level of certainty that absolutely no medical intervention was required, and Dukat and Mika had a child naturally, which means that they fit the common definition of being the same species. But despite their cosmetic differences, Bajorans and Cardassians are actually an exceptionally good candidate for being the same species. Bajor and Cardassia are neighboring solar systems. Now, that alone doesn't really mean much, except for the fact that ancient Bajorans were capable of faster-than-light travel by using light-propelled ships to travel on tachyon eddies that connected their two systems. Now, this technology is only ever framed as belonging to ancient Bajorans, but it's very possible that ancient Bajorans and ancient Cardassians were the same thing at one time. After all, even the earliest form of interstellar travel attributed to Bajorans is actually fairly advanced already. A ship like this doesn't just materialize in space with the engineering necessary to make long voyages. These ships were likely the result of generations of spacefaring technology, payload launch systems required to put building materials and people in orbit, re-entry systems to bring pilots back home safely, technology? That is to say, while we're supposed to consider this ship as primitive 800-year-old technology, it actually represents a highly advanced level of craftsmanship and reflects a finely tuned history of space travel. This ship is definitely not the oldest of its kind, and who's to say that by the 1500s, the Bajorans didn't already have a history of hundreds of years of honing their spacecraft technology. With all the necessary history and infrastructure to facilitate this sort of technology, it's really easy to imagine that there was a time when Bajorans and Cardassians were one and the same, and colonized another planet a long time ago, but the conditions of this new planet were harsh and unforgiving, and much of the spacefaring infrastructure needed to be sacrificed for survival, effectively cutting this planet off and letting them develop in isolation, eventually becoming Cardassia. But while this long separation led to the two populations developing very different apparent characteristics, their robust genetics remained much the same, so much that even in modern times, natural interbreeding was still possible. So in short, all the evidence points to Bajorans and Cardassians being capable of producing offspring naturally, and both come from neighboring solar systems that had ancient contact. But what do you think? Am I way off base here, or am I onto something? What other species might actually be the same species? Let me know. If you liked this video, subscribe to see more and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.